Can you imagine living in a world where a technical glitch could trigger a global disaster? The greatest threats to humanity weren't wars fought on the battlefield. Instead, they lurked in the shadows, waiting for a moment of misjudgment, a technical glitch, or a slip of human error to ignite chaos. These were the moments that almost sparked World War III. Let's uncover the harrowing mistakes that could have rewritten history by starting an endless war. In October 1962, the world was closer to nuclear war than ever before. The United States had found Soviet ballistic missiles in Cuba, just 90 miles away from its coast. President John F. Kennedy faced a tough choice. Should he strike first and risk a nuclear disaster, or negotiate with Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev? For 13 tense days, the world held its breath as these two superpowers played a dangerous game. But one of the closest calls didn't come from the leaders themselves. It happened deep in the Caribbean Sea. On October 27th, a Soviet submarine armed with nuclear torpedoes was trapped by U.S. Navy ships. As American ships dropped depth charges, they had no idea they were dealing with a nuclear-armed submarine. Inside, the crew was cut off from communication and feared that World War III had already begun. In that moment, one man, Vasily Arkhipov, became the hero. His calm thinking stopped the submarine commander from launching a nuclear torpedo. He was the last line of defense between the world and disaster. The Cuban Missile Crisis ended with a shaky agreement, but the near launch of just one torpedo could have led to total destruction. What if Arkhipov hadn't been there? What if things had gone differently? Those days remind us how close we really came to a great war. Let's go back to November 1983. The Cold War was heating up again, and the threat of nuclear war was very real. This time, it wasn't just about political tensions. It was a military exercise called Able Archer 83 that nearly caused World War III. Able Archer was a regular NATO drill meant to practice what would happen if conflicts escalated to nuclear war. But to the paranoid Soviet leadership, it looked like much more than just a simulation. They feared it was cover for a genuine nuclear strike. Soviet intelligence began prepping for the worst, even loading nuclear warheads onto bombers and raising the readiness of their missile forces. The world stood on the precipice of destruction, and no one knew it. For 5 days, as NATO performed its drill, the Soviet Union was on high alert. One wrong move, one misinterpreted signal, and the Cold War could have turned hot. Thankfully, both sides' calmness and professional mindset prevailed, and the exercise ended without incident. But this close call left one alarming lesson. Even a simulation could spark a global threat. On November 9, 1979, that scary thought became a reality. At the North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD, a computer screen suddenly flashed a terrifying message. The Soviet Union had launched a massive nuclear attack on the United States. Hundreds of incoming missiles appeared to be heading straight for America. The United States sprang into action, preparing for an immediate response. Bombers were sent into the air, missile silos were ready, and the president's nuclear briefcase was on standby. The world teetered on the brink of nuclear war, until, out of nowhere, the alert was canceled. What caused this sudden change? It was a training tape. A technician had accidentally loaded a simulation of a Soviet missile attack into the real NORAD system, setting off the false alarm. No missiles were ever fired, but for those terrifying minutes, the world's fate hung on a tiny mistake. A simple glitch nearly brought civilization to an end. September 26, 1983. Just weeks before the Able Archer crisis, one man was crucial in saving the world from nuclear war. Stanislav Petrov, a Soviet lieutenant colonel responsible for monitoring early warning systems. That night, something unimaginable had happened. The radar showed 5 incoming U.S. missiles. The alarm blared loudly, and Petrov was required to report this potential attack to his superiors. If he had done that, it could have triggered a retaliatory strike from the Soviet Union. But Petrov paused. Something didn't feel right. He thought that if the U.S. were really attacking, they wouldn't just send 5 missiles, they would launch a full-scale attack. Trusting his instincts, he decided to report it as a false alarm. As it turned out, Petrov was right. A glitch in the Soviet satellite system had mistaken sunlight bouncing off of clouds for missile launches. Thanks to Stanislav Petrov's quick thinking and calm reaction under pressure, he likely prevented a nuclear disaster, earning him the title, "The Man Who Saved the World." Not every close call with nuclear disaster was caused by political tensions or technical errors. In 1966, a routine mission took a disastrous turn. A U.S. B-52 bomber, loaded with 4 hydrogen bombs, collided with a refueling aircraft over Palomares, Spain. The bomber broke apart, and the nuclear bombs fell from the sky. Luckily, the bombs didn't explode. However, 2 of them burst open upon impact, scattering radioactive plutonium across the Spanish countryside. It took months to clean up the contamination, and one of the bombs was only found later when it was recovered from the Mediterranean Sea. While this incident didn't lead to World War III, it stands as a chilling reminder of how easily nuclear weapons can get out of control. Nuclear close calls like these highlight just how fragile global peace really is. The world's fate can depend upon a single decision, a small mistake, or even one person being in the right place at the right time. We may never know how many other close calls have been hidden from us, but one thing is clear: the path to nuclear war is closer than we think. These threats are more dangerous and alarming for all of us. How many more close calls can we survive?